is Radio Caroline on 199, your all-day music station. We are on the air every day from 6 in the morning to 6 at night. The time right now is 1 minute past 12, and that means it's time for Christopher Moore.
Hello and happy Easter to all of you. This is Christopher Moore with the First Record program on Radio Caroline. The first record is by the Rolling Stones.
American-born Christopher Moore presented the first program to be broadcast by Radio Caroline on Easter Saturday, 28th of March 1964. The program was sponsored by English public school boy Simon D., real name Cyril Nicholas Henty Dodd. Christopher was brought over to England at the age of 8 by his mother and soon packed off to boarding school. His mother is said to have had several different careers, one working as a diplomat for the United Nations. Tales of his mother's and stepfather's contacts in the world of diplomacy and 1950s espionage have mysteriously remained in their circle of friends. As one of the founding trio of Radio Caroline, Moore hired DJs who later became national figures on BBC radio and television, as well as independent networks, like Simon D. before his career came crashing down. Certain songs can evoke memories of a time and place. 3 songs come to mind that I associate with 60s pirate radio for different reasons. My Friend Jack by The Smoke, Baby Come Back by The Equals, and The Days of Pearly Spencer by Irish singer-songwriter David McWilliams. If it hadn't been for pirate radio, I wouldn't have heard of the first one. With the opening line My Friend Jack Eats Sugar Lumps, which is regarded as psychedelic rock, the song had been rumoured to have been about LSD. The single was duly pulled off the UK market, banned by the BBC within 3 weeks of its release, and subsequently only reached number 45 in the UK charts. But hearing it was enough to raise my awareness that a sugar cube dosed with LSD was one way in which the drug could be taken, and gave me a sense of being in the know, and in with the in crowd, with my possession of forbidden knowledge. It wasn't a particularly great song, but the opening line is memorable, and it did make it to number 2 in Germany. Unfortunately, the song turned out to be a one-hit wonder for The Smoke. The 2 songs that stand out in particular, not just because both were plugged to death on Radio Caroline, but because both are truly excellent songs in my opinion, were the stomping Baby Come Back by The Equals, written by Eddie Grant, with a riff and a hook line you can hang your hat on. The other being the brilliantly moody Days of Pearly Spencer, written and performed by Northern Irish singer-songwriter David McWilliams. The song is said to be inspired by a homeless man McWilliams had encountered in Ballymena, Ireland. The song is particularly memorable for its sweeping orchestral arrangement by Mike Leander, and parts of the vocal section that sound like McWilliams is singing through a megaphone, which sounded a bit psychedelic to me at the time. To say the song received considerable exposure on Radio Caroline through marketing would be an understatement. Double-page adverts were taken out in all the major music newspapers, and the New Musical Express front page featured it. The BBC refused to play the record because it was released on the Major Minor label, and because of its owner's involvement in the offshore radio station, and the record failed to chart in either the UK or the Republic of Ireland. The owner of Major Minor Records was Phil Solomon, co-director of Radio Caroline. Solomon became a board member of Radio Caroline when the station ran into troubled waters and needed an investor to bail it out. Solomon acquired 20% of the company's shares and effectively took over control of Radio Caroline. His instinct for business owed much to being steeped in show business during an upbringing as the youngest child of a wealthy Belfast Jewish family. His brother Mervyn founded the Emerald label, while his father Morris was a shareholder in Decca. And naturally, most of Solomon's best-known clients are contracted to the Decca label. Unsurprisingly, he who pays the piper calls the tune, as the saying goes. And with Phil Solomon as co-director of Radio Caroline, the station began to support the artists he had a vested interest in, including The Bachelors, Them, and Twinkle. In fact, the success of Twinkle's one big hit, Terry, a top 10 record in 1964, was largely down to airplay from Radio Caroline, as the BBC famously declined to include the song in its programme due to the morbid subject matter, the death of a hero in a motorcycle crash. I can't say the song was a favourite of mine, and as for The Bachelors, well, to my teenage taste in music, the songs they sang were the audio equivalent of pouring sticky, sugary syrup in my ears. I often wondered what on earth the DJs were thinking when they played The Bachelors singles, which was certainly not in line with what teenagers wanted to hear. The Bachelors were contracted to Decca, and Solomon's success with them prompted the firm to sign the group Them, that featured Van Morrison on lead vocals, a group I did like. There were some misgivings about the quality of some of the records the DJs were required to play, and listeners complained about the mediocre major-minor tracks that were being aired. The major-minor record label being owned by Radio Caroline co-director Phil Solomon. American DJ Michael Pasternak, who called himself Emperor Roscoe, was fired a few times by Solomon because he refused to play the major-minor records, and was subsequently re-employed by Caroline's other co-director, Ronan O'Reilly. But some major-minor releases did make the charts, such as the Dubliners' 7 Drunken Nights and Jane Birkin's and Serge Gainsbourg's Je T'aime. The Dubliners' 7 Drunken Nights reached number 7 in the UK charts in 1967, thanks to airplay on Radio Caroline, and the group appeared on the BBC's flagship pop TV show Top of the Pops. Although it was banned from the Irish National Broadcasting Station due to its sexual content, the song also reached number 1 in Ireland. Jane Birkin's and Serge Gainsbourg's Je T'aime also contains so-called sexual content. Originally released in England on the Fontana label, it was an instant success, reaching number 2 in the charts, when the BBC suddenly banned it due to its overtly sexual content, apparently. The record company immediately withdrew it from sale, following a complaint from the boss's wife, and it appeared to be doomed until Phil Solomon released it on his own major-minor record label the next day. The song was played constantly in defiance of the BBC ban on pirate and European radio stations throughout the summer of 1969. For me, however, it was just an easy listening instrumental with some poor vocals sung in French and a bit of heavy breathing. In August 1967, the Wilson government outlawed pirate radio, causing Phil Solomon to intensify the station's operations. He began to heavily promote records from Solomon's major-minor label. Caroline's DJs were unhappy with the type of music they were being forced to play. But it is doubtful that much of the revenue from the record label actually went into the radio station. But at least thanks to pirate radio, teenagers like me got to hear some songs the BBC wouldn't play. Even though, with a few exceptions, most on the major-minor label were more to Phil Solomon's liking than ours. Radio Caroline's other co-director, Ronan O'Reilly, had his own artists to promote. The BBC's Light programme restricted pop music to 2 shows a week, Saturday Club and Easy Beat, and a chart rundown Pick of the Pops, and wasn't interested in playing the Georgie Fame single, nor was Radio Luxembourg. So O'Reilly announced he would start his own radio station to play Fame's music. I'm sure there was more to it than that, but it makes a good story and adds to the Radio Caroline legend, or should I say myth. Although offshore pirate radio was considered part of the swinging 60s cultural shift associated with the Labour government's term in office, at midnight on August 14, 1967, the Labour government's Marine Broadcasting Offences Act made broadcasting from a boat off the British mainland illegal. Another favourite offshore pirate radio ship of mine, called Radio London, also known as Big L and Wonderful Radio London, started operating from the 23rd of December 1964 from a ship anchored in the North Sea off the Essex coast of England. Regrettably, these pirates complied with Labour's new Broadcasting Offences Act and went off air on the 14th of August 1967. Despite initial plans to the contrary, Radio London decided not to defy the law and closed before the Act came into effect. So not much rebellion among these pirates. But before it went off air, Radio London got an 8-day UK exclusive on the Sgt. Pepper album, playing it first on the 12th of May 1967. The album was later in the shops on the 1st of June. Radio London used jingles tailored for British listeners that were created by Pam's Productions Incorporated, an acronym for Production, Advertising and Merchandising Service, which was based in Dallas, Texas, which, unknown to British listeners, was one of the most famous jingle production companies in American broadcasting. The jingles can be heard on The Who's December 1967 Who Sellout album. But by the time The Who released their tribute to the station, sadly Radio London was a thing of the past. The free butterfly poster that came with The Who Sellout album survived longer on my bedroom wall.